Newt Gingrich is a former Speaker of the House and author of the new book, Trump's America, and a Fox News contributor. Mr. Speaker, great to have you on the program this morning. My condolences to you. John McCain was a man you came to know very well, and we're all remembering him this morning. And we do remember him as a man who was never afraid to speak his mind, and he was a straight shooter.
Well, I'd known John in the Congress since 1982 when he was first elected, so it's a long experience. I worked with him in his campaign in 2008, and I had enormous respect for him, partially because I'm very, very close to General Chuck Boyd, who was a prisoner of war with McCain, and who thought so highly of the leadership and the courage that McCain showed in the prison camp in Vietnam. And that really colored my whole approach to John, because you realize what he'd been through. You realized how deeply he was patriotic and wanted to serve the country. And the only thing, by the way, I thought Karen Tumulty did a great job just now, except I don't think it's that John looked for fights. I think John is like Theodore Roosevelt. He spent every morning looking for causes which then justified a fight. But he was a very cause-oriented person, whether the cause at one point when he took on the Bush administration over the issue of torture, where obviously he had unique standing, or whether it was the fact that he sided with Bush in strengthening our forces in Iraq at a time when it was very unpopular, and ended up, ironically, winning the New Hampshire primary, because even though people didn't agree with him, they so much admired his courage and his candor that they voted for him in the Republican primary, even as he was telling them something they didn't want to know. So John had a remarkable ability to find issues and to find causes that were worthy of fighting, and then he was utterly, totally fearless. I've never seen anybody who had a greater capacity for taking on anybody or anything than John McCain.
In the wake of his death, you have decided to write about why John McCain was such an inspiration to you, Speaker Gingrich. Why was he?
Well, part of it was just purely personal, as I recounted in the article that I wrote for FoxNews.com. Literally, I was on the floor of the House one day when John was still in the House, and I'd been involved in some big fight with the Democrats. And two of their larger members, physically larger, came over, and they were sort of trying to psychologically push me. And they said, look, you know, we know what you're doing, and we're coming for you. Well, I didn't realize that John was next to me. He instantly physically stepped in next to me, looked up at him, because he's not that big physically, looked up at him and said, when you come for him, you have to come for me. The name is McCain, M-C-C-A-N. I almost felt like I was watching the automatic behavior that he'd learned in Hanoi in the prison camp. And ever since, I've always looked at him and sort of like, wow, here's a guy who will protect you at a moment's notice.
If I could ask you to weigh in on the discussion that is the relationship that he had with the president. He was obviously openly critical of the president and his policies, and Fox News is reporting that the White House had drafted a statement on John McCain, but then decided to never release it, although the president did tweet his condolences to the family. What was that relationship between McCain and Trump?
Look, I think you had two very tough guys who very early on in the Trump presidential campaign got at loggerheads. McCain took a shot at Trump, and as you know, you shoot at Trump, he's going to shoot back immediately. I think what Trump said at the time was very unwise and very inaccurate, but nonetheless, by that point, they're locked into this personal relationship of hostility, and then there are genuine, honest policy differences. And I think that's part of what you get when you have a disruptive new president. So the two of them seem to find it impossible to unlock and start over.
Well, it's great to get your thoughts and your look back at his life this morning. Speaker Newt Gingrich, thank you. Nice to see you.
Good to be with you.